Welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a comparison side by side between HGiG versus dynamic tone mapping on. Now what you're going to be looking at here is a private match on Call of Duty. On the left you have HGiG. The settings on that have been set up for the PS5 and the LG C2. And over on the right, all of the settings are done based on dynamic tone mapping on, and setting those up individually look very different. Now, what we want to do in this particular video is just take a look at the gameplay. My apologies up front. The gameplay is not going to be the exact same because they were recorded individually, and I promise the only changes that were made between the two were the settings based on HGiG or dynamic tone mapping on. So there may be some times during this short gameplay where the videos may overlap or be very similar where I can kind of speak on them. But besides that, the main point here is for you to be able to take a look at how HGiG looks with that calibrated versus how dynamic tone mapping on looks. And you're really going to be looking for two things. Number one, the overall image brightness difference. And number two, how the highlights are impacted. You could kind of see there where looking up at a highlight like the sun on a sunny day in the middle of the sky in an HDR game, it's probably going to tend to be more blown out overall, but your overall image quality is going to be much brighter on the dynamic tone mapping on option versus HGiG. So it's kind of one of those things where you have to pick your poison. If you're somebody who kind of values more, accurate looking image, and you're not worried as much about overall brightness, you just want the image to look crisp, to have that three-dimensional sort of look to it that an OLED typically gives you, and the overall image to be good, HGiG may be your cup of tea. However, if you're somebody like myself who has gamed on LED TVs for the last several years and you're transitioning, let's say you're somebody who's transitioning into an OLED for the first time and you're concerned about the overall brightness of the image, I can see why you might lean towards the dynamic tone mapping option, because that particular option, when set up properly with the PlayStation 5, is going to offer the brighter overall image. Now, other things that I kind of note as I'm playing through with each setup that way is that the best way I can describe how dynamic tone mapping on looks is the overall image is brighter, yes, but the image kind of has an airy sort of look to it, like a hazy sort of look, especially when I'm looking in scenes like if you're looking at the DTM on section right now, it's bright. I'm looking at the sky again. It has more of an airy overall look, kind of a hazy. It doesn't feel as crisp. That's the best way to put it. It looks brighter, it looks punchier, but it's not as crispy, okay? And if you're hungry, I'm sorry about that, but that was just the best way for me to describe that. So, let's talk a little bit more about HGiG. For me, HGiG offers more of that OLED three-dimensional look. If that's something that has enticed you over to the OLED side of things, HGiG, in my opinion, is going to offer that much better than DTM on. So, at the end of the day here, as the gameplay should be wrapping up here pretty soon, what I want to say is, in my opinion, there's no wrong answer in here. That's just my opinion. I think if you're somebody who tends to side with more of, hey, I want my overall image to look crisp and I want it to look more accurate, you're probably going to side with HGiG. And if you're somebody who's just looking for a brighter overall experience, with the penalty you're going to pay is your highlights are going to be more blown out. So like the sun in the sky, or if you're playing a game that has like, lanterns and like fire, stuff like that you walk by, you're going to notice that the lighting and the flames are going to be much more blown out on dynamic tone mapping on, versus HGiG, you'll actually still be able to see the details there. So, like I said, this is getting close to wrapping up the gameplay here. Just wanted to do a side-by-side to give you an idea of, okay, here's what these two look like and which one might work best for you. Until the next one.